Silence is not emptiness. Silence is information. And the moment you stop talking to a woman, something very deep inside her begins to move. Not because she is weak, not because she is desperate, but because silence removes the distraction. Words keep people comfortable. Silence forces them to face truth. When you stop talking to her, you are no longer feeding reassurance, validation, or emotional safety. And that is when her real psychology starts revealing itself. At first, she will tell herself that it doesn't matter. She will act normal. She will stay busy. She will scroll longer than usual. She will talk louder with others. She will smile a little more in public. This is not confidence. This is the nervous system trying to regulate uncertainty. Because when a woman is used to emotional access and suddenly it's gone, her mind doesn't ask what happened. It asks, what did I lose? A woman doesn't immediately miss a man. She misses how she felt around him. And when you stop talking to her, the emotional mirror disappears. She can no longer measure herself through your attention. And that creates discomfort, not pain yet, awareness. Then she starts replaying conversations, not the dramatic ones, the small ones, the jokes, the pauses, the moments where she felt understood without explaining herself. Silence sharpens memory because now there is space. And in that space, emotions grow louder. This is where many people get confused. They think if a woman doesn't text immediately, she doesn't care. That is false. A woman processes internally first. She observes her own emotional reactions before she reacts outwardly. When you stop talking to her, she watches herself. She notices irritation, then curiosity, then subtle anxiety, and then one honest question forms in her mind. Why am I affected by this? If she didn't care, silence would feel light. But if silence feels heavy, it means attachment existed, even if she never admitted it. Next, she will test reality. She may post something slightly louder than usual, a story, a quote, a picture that says, I'm fine without saying it. This is not manipulation. This is subconscious signaling. Humans seek confirmation when certainty is removed. She wants to see if your silence is permanent or temporary, if it's emotional or strategic, if you noticed her absence the way she noticed yours. But here's the key point most people miss. A woman doesn't chase immediately when you stop talking. She first checks her self-respect. She asks herself, should I reach out? And if she has emotional intelligence, she will hesitate because women are taught to protect dignity before desire. So she stays quiet longer than she wants to. And that silence hurts her more than it hurts you. During this phase, she becomes more emotionally honest with herself. She may realize she was more invested than she thought, or she may realize she relied too much on the connection to feel stable. Either way, growth or attachment begins here. If your presence brought peace, your absence will bring restlessness. If your presence brought confusion, your absence will bring relief. Silence always reveals the truth of the bond. Then comes comparison. She will talk to others, but notice something is missing. Conversations feel flat. Laughter feels forced. Attention feels noisy but empty because emotional familiarity cannot be replaced quickly. The nervous system recognizes emotional safety, not just attraction. This is when she truly feels your absence, not because you were perfect, but because you were consistent. And consistency creates emotional grounding. When that grounding disappears, the mind searches for it. At this point, one of two things happens. If she values connection over ego, she will reach out calmly, casually, carefully, not to beg, but to reconnect, because silence clarified what words distracted her from seeing. But if her ego is louder than her emotional awareness, she will stay silent and tell herself she moved on, while still checking, still wondering, still feeling unsettled. This silence is not strength, it is unresolved attachment wearing pride as armor. Here is the most important psychological truth. When you stop talking to a woman, you remove emotional certainty. And the human brain hates uncertainty more than rejection. Silence creates a psychological vacuum, and whatever feelings were real will rush to fill it. If she truly didn't care, she will detach cleanly. No drama, no curiosity, no internal dialogue. But if she cared even a little, silence will force her to confront that truth alone. This is why silence is powerful, not because it controls her, but because it removes emotional noise. And in quiet, the heart speaks honestly. And one more thing people misunderstand: a woman doesn't fall because you disappear. She reflects because you disappear. Silence doesn't create feelings, it reveals them. So when you stop talking to her, watch carefully, not her words, her behavior, her energy, her emotional shifts, because in silence, people show you who you really were to them. And if she comes back calmer, clearer, more intentional, it means silence helped her understand value. If she comes back defensive, distant, or blaming, it means silence exposed insecurity she hasn't healed yet. Either way, you learn the truth without asking a single question. That is the psychology of silence. That is what a woman does when you stop talking to her. And during this phase, something very subtle but very important happens inside her. She starts reclaiming emotional control or realizing she never truly had it. Silence forces self-confrontation. When there are no messages to decode, no tone to analyze, no reassurance arriving on time, she has to sit with her own emotional reactions. And most people are not comfortable with that. She may tell herself stories that you're busy, that you lost interest, that she didn't care anyway. These stories are coping mechanisms. The brain creates narratives to reduce emotional discomfort. But late at night, when distractions fade, the truth becomes louder because emotions don't respond to logic. They respond to emotional memory. She will remember how she felt seen, how she felt calmer after talking to you, how certain fears softened in your presence. Silence removes the emotional regulator. And when regulation disappears, emotional dependency becomes visible. This is also when she becomes more observant than ever. She notices patterns she ignored before, how often you initiated, how you responded when she was distant, how you stayed consistent even when she wasn't. Silence gives her a clearer lens, not a kinder one, a sharper one. If she felt emotionally safe with you, she now feels emotionally exposed without you. That doesn't mean she will immediately reach out. It means she is recalibrating her emotional boundaries. She is asking herself whether she wants connection badly enough to risk vulnerability. And vulnerability is not easy for women who have learned to protect themselves emotionally. Silence triggers old wounds, abandonment, inconsistency, emotional unpredictability, not because you caused them, but because silence removes the illusion of control. She may become more irritable with others, less patient, more introspective, because emotional disruption often leaks into unrelated areas of life. When an emotional bond is interrupted, the nervous system reacts globally, not selectively. Another thing happens here. She tests herself. She resists the urge to reach out, not to punish you, but to see if she can tolerate the distance. This is emotional strength building, but it's painful because resisting connection hurts more than expressing it. And if days pass, her emotions don't disappear. They deepen. Feelings don't fade in silence. They either clarify or transform. If attachment was shallow, it dissolves. If it was meaningful, it matures. This is where many people make mistakes. They break silence too early. They interrupt the psychological process. They rush clarity because they're uncomfortable with uncertainty. But uncertainty is where emotional truth forms. Silence also shifts power dynamics, not in a manipulative way, but in an energetic one. When you stop explaining yourself, justifying your absence, or chasing emotional responses, you become emotionally grounded. And grounded energy is deeply felt, even without words. She may feel a sudden urge to redefine the connection, to understand where she stands. Because ambiguity is emotionally exhausting. Silence creates that ambiguity, and the need for emotional definition becomes stronger than the need for pride. This is also when she separates fantasy from reality. She stops projecting who she thought you were and starts evaluating who you actually were. Your consistency, your presence, your emotional availability. Silence removes romantic noise and leaves behavioral evidence. And slowly, her emotional response becomes more honest, less reactive, more reflective. She may accept things she resisted before or question things she assumed were normal because distance provides perspective. If she reaches out after this phase, it will feel different, slower, more intentional, less emotionally charged, because silence matures emotion before it expresses it. And if she doesn't reach out, it doesn't always mean she didn't care. Sometimes it means she cared enough to walk away instead of repeating emotional confusion. Silence doesn't always bring people back. Sometimes it brings self-respect forward. But one thing is certain, silence never leaves things the same. It always changes something inside a woman, how she feels, how she perceives, how she values connection. Because when you stop talking to her, you stop shaping her emotions with your presence, and she finally hears her own. And once she starts hearing her own emotions clearly, she cannot unhear them. That's when internal dialogue becomes intense. She begins questioning her own behavior, not just yours. Why she reacted the way she did, why certain words stayed with her, why your absence feels louder than other people's presence. Silence removes external stimulation and turns everything inward. She may suddenly become more self-aware. She notices patterns in herself, how she pulls back when things feel real, how she avoids expressing needs, how she expects others to understand without explanation. Silence doesn't just reflect the bond, it reflects the self. This is also when emotional accountability begins. If she was inconsistent, distant, or emotionally guarded, silence forces her to confront the consequences of that behavior. Not in a blaming way, but in a sobering one. She realizes that emotional access is not guaranteed. It's earned and maintained. And here's something rarely spoken about. Silence challenges a woman's sense of emotional influence. When communication stops, she no longer knows where she stands. And uncertainty challenges emotional security more than rejection ever could, because rejection has an ending, uncertainty does not. She may replay moments where she could have shown more care, more softness, more honesty, not because she feels guilty, but because emotional loss sharpens emotional clarity. You don't value consistency until it disappears. At the same time, she becomes more emotionally selective. She may pull back from others, not because she wants isolation, but because shallow interactions feel empty. When a meaningful emotional rhythm is interrupted, the nervous system rejects substitutes. Her body feels it before her mind accepts it. Sleep changes, appetite shifts, attention drifts. Emotional attachment isn't just psychological, it's physiological, and silence disrupts that regulation. She might also feel a quiet anger, not explosive, subtle, anger that comes from not understanding why something meaningful was left unresolved. This isn't about control, it's about emotional continuity. Humans are wired to seek emotional closure. And when closure isn't given, the mind fills in gaps, often inaccurately. She may assume meanings you never intended. Silence invites interpretation. And interpretation is shaped by past experiences, not present facts. That's why silence can feel so heavy. It carries imagined conversations, unspoken explanations, unanswered questions, and she holds all of that alone. Yet in this heaviness, something stabilizes. She learns to self soothe, to regulate emotions without external reassurance. And this is growth, even if it hurts. If she is emotionally mature, silence becomes a teacher. She learns what she wants, what she tolerates, what she no longer accepts. If she is emotionally unprepared, silence feels like abandonment rather than space. Either way, transformation is happening quietly. And this is where attachment either dissolves or deepens, because attachment is not maintained by constant contact. It's maintained by emotional meaning, and silence tests meaning more than words ever could. She may finally accept a truth she avoided, that the connection mattered more than she admitted, or that it wasn't aligned with who she's becoming. Both realizations are powerful, both are painful, both are necessary. Silence does not demand a response, it demands reflection, and reflection reshapes emotional priorities. She stops romanticizing the absence and starts understanding the role the connection played in her life. Was it grounding? Was it destabilizing? Was it familiar or healthy? Silence removes illusion and replaces it with emotional reality. And in that reality, decisions begin forming slowly, quietly, deliberately. Not impulsive messages, not dramatic confrontations, but internal resolutions. Because by the time a woman truly understands how silence made her feel, she has already changed. So understand this clearly. When you stop talking to a woman, you are not ending a conversation, you are starting a revelation. Silence does not chase, beg, or explain. Silence exposes. It exposes attachment, insecurity, emotional maturity, and self respect on both sides. A woman doesn't react to silence with words first. She reacts with awareness. And by the time she speaks again, she is no longer the same woman who lost your voice. She is someone who finally understood what it meant. Silence doesn't make her miss you blindly. It makes her see the truth clearly. And whatever returns after silence is not confusion, it is choice.